Today we have our resident coach, Anton Russell, who is here to unpack the topic of incubators for entrepreneurs or small businesses. And we also have Gary, who has benefited from this program, or who will share his experiences in terms of how that has helped his business. Anton, welcome.
Thank you.
And welcome, Gary.
Thank you.
So please unpack this topic. It's a buzzword around the entrepreneurship space. Incubators, some people, they have negative experiences, some have positive experiences. So from a mentor's perspective, can you explain it first? What is it? What does it mean?
I saw an interesting post on Twitter the other day that someone put there saying that instead of spending money on incubators, we should rather just give the money directly to entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs, probably Gary included, would maybe agree, hang on, that's not a bad idea. However, I think firstly we need to look at the different types of incubators that exist.
Yes.
You know, you get virtual incubators, which are really programs, often enterprise development or supply development programs. And that's where a particular body will be contracted by usually a corporate,
Yes.
who would fund a program, and they would run a series of interventions to assist entrepreneurs to be more sustainable, to be more conscious of things like their systems and their pricing and their marketing and so on. And that would be a formal program, normally between 12 and 24 months.
Yes.
And it would involve workshops, mentorship, and other support. And then you get physical incubators, which are actually things like Shanduka Black Umbrellas,
Yes.
where they set up a physical space and you can go in and you can have access to certain business services and business support and potentially skills training as well. The two are quite different, and so I think a distinction does need to be drawn.
Yes.
However, the ultimate aim, I suppose, of any entrepreneurial or small business incubator is to create growth and to create sustainability and to ultimately provide some form of benefit to the entrepreneurs who have elected to be a part of the program or have chosen to be a part of the program.
And support
Absolutely.
throughout that process.
And often quite long after. I've had certain businesses that I've worked with many years ago as part of incubation programs who still contact me quite regularly, and it's always nice to A, know that they're still alive, and B, just to kind of maintain that contact.
Yes. Gary, you're a good example of this. You've been part of an incubation program. Tell us about your experience.
Actually, been part of two. So we were lucky enough to win two awards. One was from Pick n Pay,
Okay.
which was a supply development program. And the second one was through the SAB Foundation, which is what my connections with Anton as a mentor.
Yes.
And I think in both cases there was a very specific goal in mind and two different goals. So Pick n Pay was very much about supply development. How do you become a supplier into Pick n Pay?
Yes.
And that's been it's a very long process. It involves everything from understanding their distribution centers through to safety audits, etc. So that's a very practical one, very hands-on.
Yes.
And then with Anton, it was more a case of getting us more business ready, I guess, to scale. So the other side of our business is coffee shops.
Yes.
And with the support of the funding support, we were able to really establish the brand and our offering, etc. And at the same time, be guided very well by Anton in terms
Yes.
of how we focused and where we took the brand, which has got us to a stage where we can evolve and maybe even into another incubation program.
Yeah. So Anton, if small business owners want to be involved, just guidelines. What are the criteria? What is the criterion for them to be involved?
I think the most important thing is understanding why you would want to enter an incubation program in the first place or engage with one.
Okay.
You know, in Gary's case, there were very clear outcomes, as he said. If
Yes.
they accessed the Pick n Pay supplier development incubator so that they could ultimately become suppliers to Pick n Pay because
Yes.
they manufacture a product that has a lot of potential to be on the shelves. They also accessed the SAB Foundation support because Gary recognized that there were certain areas in the business that he could use a bit of shoring up, and I think that was potentially where I was able to just look at things from a slightly different angle.
Yes.
You know, perhaps not being operationally involved, I had different kind of insights.
Yes.
And sometimes we've argued and sometimes we've agreed, but for the most part, the choices have been correct ultimately, that collectively we've made as a team, I would think. So I'd say to any entrepreneur, it's why do you want to do it? If your business is going along really well and you're growing and you're sustainable, like, why would you enter an incubation program unless perhaps it's a supply development program and you want to access a certain supply chain or a certain corporate supply chain? Then it would make sense.
Yeah.
You need to comply, you need to understand their systems, and so you'd go into the program with that outcome in mind. What I do see a lot of is people entering incubation programs to access funding and not really wanting the rest of the package that comes along with it.
Yeah.
And to my mind, that's a bit problematic as well, because money in and of itself very seldom solves problems. We've spoken about that in previous installments.
Yes.
You can throw all the money in the world at a system or a bad business model, and it's not going to turn it into a good business model. It's just going to paper over the cracks until the money runs out.
Any pitfalls? I know we've spoken a lot about what can your business benefit. Are there any pitfalls that the business owners should look out for before they even try to conduct those incubation programs for support?
I think one of the main pitfalls, not really a pitfall, but it's something to be considered, is that they're time consuming.
Okay.
What you put in is what you get out. So if you join an incubator, a virtual incubator program, or you go into a physical incubator, there's an expectation that you're going to put in the time and the effort to make it work. And it could be sometimes 10, 15, 20 hours a month of effort.
Yes.
To actually reap the real reward. So that's the one thing, is that, don't expect to just be able to cherry pick, I like that part, so I'll do that, but I'm not going to submit my financial figures at the end of the month because
as
it's
required.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it is a commitment, a time commitment. That's one of the things to be considered. Another thing to be considered is the different quality of incubation programs, and not all of them, frankly, are great. Some of them really, in my opinion, and having even worked in certain incubators, could be better, and don't necessarily meet the needs of the entrepreneur, but tend to meet the needs of the funder who's funding the incubator more than they meet the needs of the entrepreneur. And I think that what I would recommend any potential business owner who's considering getting support of this nature to do is speak to people who've been on that program.
Yes.
Pick up the phone, chat, email, say how was it, what worked, what didn't work, and do your homework, go in with your eyes open, because if done correctly and if embraced well and in a good spirit,
yes,
it can actually transform your business.